Hello, my loves. Welcome to another edition of Mondays with Meaning. Today's topic is going to be called Winning at Change. So I'll give you a few minutes to come on. As you're coming on board, please say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. If you are watching on Facebook, please make sure that you give StreamYard permission to show me that you're watching. It will let me see who's actually watching. And if you're watching on YouTube, just put hello in the comments. Let me know that you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. I'm always interested in that. So if you're watching live, I love hashtags. I love emojis. I love smileys. It makes me feel like we're connecting out there. And if you're watching replay, please put a replay in the comments. So that helps a lot. So let us begin. Do you have your notepad? You ready to go? Also, is the volume okay? Someone give me a thumbs up. I hope the sound's okay. It is the beginning of March, and it's time to do just a little bit of check-in. So last month was really around the idea of planting these seeds. In January, we spent time looking at what the plan might be for the year, what inspiration we wanted to have, what direction we wanted to grow into. And February was really about planting those seeds, putting that into action, kind of taking care of what was happening in our internal garden. Last week's episode was around pruning back the idea of limiting beliefs. Hello, Mara. Thanks for letting me know you're here. That's so great. So that idea of pruning back those limiting beliefs, it's so important to remember that pruning and getting rid of those beliefs, it makes space, it makes everything healthier. It makes plants more robust as they're growing. And it also, when we're talking about it in a planting sense, it allows the plant to grow in a more specific way, aka it changes the pattern of growth, the direction that the plant was growing. So that is why we're going to talk this week about change. And this month is more about the emerging of these seeds as they're starting to sprout in your life and how we can kind of keep them heading in the direction that we're wanting to grow into. Why winning at change? Well, as we're planting these seeds, as we're trying to move our lives into the direction that we're wanting to head, it can become so difficult because we're asking ourselves to change something that may be a very ingrained way of behaving, a pattern that's very standard in our lives. And why does that become so difficult? It's really a beautiful reason that it's so difficult. Our brains are designed to recognize patterns. And that's just a wonderful way that we're able to think clearly. It's a really great way that we're able to just have to spend less brain power on doing our lives, right? When we're learning new things, it requires a lot of actual learning, mind, brain, learning engagement. But the amazing things about our bodies is as we get these patterns built in, we get what most people understand to be muscle memory. It's not truly muscle memory, but what it is nerves that fire together, wire together, which is why I've mentioned before, if you drive your car, you learned how to drive a car. When you first learned, it was like every little moment was you had to really think about. But at this point in your life, you're probably very habitual at it. It's simple. It's because it's skipping that part of your brain and just running the wired pattern. Now, when we're talking about change, we're actually asking our neural pathways to pop outside of that standard pattern that's in there. And that pattern may be related to movement, or it may be related to thought patterns. It may be related to any sort of natural flow of action that we habitually take. So when we try to break out of that into a new pattern, it's very, very difficult because that's just not how we really are wired, yet it's very possible. So the first step, of course, was to address these limiting beliefs. And if you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, please go back to last week's and get some ideas about how to become more aware of these limiting beliefs that are in your brain. But now we're going to see, how do we build that change in? How do we really start maximizing winning with change? So why are we calling it winning at change? I'd say oftentimes when we begin changing things, there's a lot of negative thought that comes through with it. Can I get an amen if anybody has this? You're like, oh, I want to do differently, but it's so hard and I can't. I mean, it's just easier to do my thing that I always do, and making this next step. I don't know if any of you guys go through this, but I have this weird, pathetic combination of a teenage self, but also maybe a toddler self that has this kind of I don't want it. So that's fun. I have to just kind of self-soothe and reparent and be like, yeah, I understand. And we're doing it anyway. So part of the hard part is this negative thought, this idea that change is only a bad thing. So there are many kinds of stress in the world. There's negative and traumatic stress, but there's also this idea of eustress, stress that helps to achieve growth. I'm thinking right now of a friend of mine who had a treehouse, beautiful treehouse built in these amazing trees. And I asked her, isn't it hard for these trees to be carrying this treehouse? Doesn't this stress the trees out? And what I learned was that actually the weight of the trees respond to that stress that helps them become stronger as they carry the weight of the treehouse balanced between them. And they take on that stress because their orientation is actually to thrive, right? That is also, our orientation is also to thrive. So eustress, this positive stress, is really, really helpful in helping us gain the direction that we're wanting to head. We are all aware that change is the only constant, right? That's the only thing that really is the same from day to day, as everything changes ever so slightly. And I also like to point out things like balance. Balance is not a noun. Balance is an act. It is a verb. So being in this place of change and being able to navigate it is a really positive and exciting place to be. So as you're starting to put these plans into action over the last couple months, maybe you're hitting a place where they're getting a little more tricky, or things have got to get revamped. So I just want to really remind you that change is what contributes to your growth and your potential. But why winning? Why winning? So I want to take a little segue here and tell you about a beautiful experience I had over the last week. So the last week I took my first retreat I've had since January of 2020. And I had scheduled it a long time in advance with the intention of just being able to unplug, kind of put my head down, connect to my work in my own way, and also just relax and just be. I had the pleasure of going to see a dear friend of mine and her partner and her little boy who just turned 3. And we all went for a little hike in the woods. And this sweet little sweetness, his name is Finn. Finn, on this hike was my husband, who's also recovering from an injury. And so this was the first hike that he'd been on. But Finn got this fern leaf and he started waving it around, and he would wave it at me and he'd say, "You're a winner." And then he would wave it at his mom, "You're a winner." And then he would wave it at my husband, "You're a winner." And then he was waving it at the dogs and just saying, "You're a winner, and you're winning, and you're a winner." And everybody was a winner. And it was so joyful to be in this space with this little one who was just delighting in walking through the forest with all of us who just, had he not been with us and kind of started coming from this perspective of winning, everybody's winning, we would have probably just had this quiet stroll and chatted, but there became this effervescent joy of how are we winning in this moment? Well, gosh, here we are in this group of friends. We're all masked and being very careful, of course, but we're outside. We're pushing our boundaries, like we're walking in a space that we haven't explored before. Like so many little ways that we can recognize how we were winning in that moment as the terrain was changing or as the dogs would burst through and run across, and we could navigate that together. And it just made me really recognize how when I am in an environment or an experience where I am experiencing change and needing to integrate that into my body, if I can remember that sense of joy of like, I'm winning at this. I'm winning. It's tricky, but man, look at this. So what I'm going to ask you is, what do you say to yourself in the midst of change as some change is happening? Or if something in your environment shifts, there's a little more chaos than you normally experience, do you say to yourself, oh, this sucks. This is terrible. What am I going to do? This is horrible. It's so hard. Or do you come from that place of like, wow, how interesting. Oh, this is another obstacle. This must be showing up because change is happening. So that would be an observation I would love for you to attend to this week, is to notice when things are changing around you, or as you're working on changing your personal patterns, what's the story that's coming up? Is it related to that limiting beliefs that we talked about last week? Or is it a bad habit of thought? Is it a bad habit? Is it a way that you talk to yourself that is not letting you hop into this change, or if it's just pulling you back into that standard pattern and way of being that you're pretty used to? So please track that this week. What else did I want to say about change? Another thing that I'm learning personally and have observed in my clients as well is, as we're getting closer to really putting change into action, it seems as if circumstances or roadblocks pop up even more so. Like there's a little bit more chaos that happens. So let's say I am working really hard on my mindset around food, let's say around eating. Like let's say I'm trying to eat healthier and I don't want to eat shitty food. And in some incredible way, and more opportunities show up for me to fall back into the old pattern, right? Maybe I'm in a situation where someone offers me something that is not something I would want to eat if I'm trying to change my eating pattern. Or it just seems like more opportunities arise for me to practice saying no. So in that place of change, here's this opportunity to be like, oh, I can't change because it's just like, I can't say no. Like it happens all the time. Like there's too many options. Every time I try to say no to something, here's a chance for me to say yes to it. So if I relate it back to the idea of pruning in my garden and getting those limiting beliefs back and training my plant to grow in a certain way, oftentimes when we prune a plant, it might send up suckers, or it might add a whole bunch of extra leaves and try to like kind of fill back in some of those old patterns as the specific branches are getting established. So I have to keep pruning back little pieces so that the branches that are trying to really fully grow will find their way and eventually take over. They will get strong enough that the plant will grow down that branch instead of sending off little side shoots. So if you are working on changing something and a whole bunch of things show up that might be hard, you can imagine those are those little suckers coming off the plant that need another application of pruning, another opportunity to change. And the more you strengthen that change, then you're getting that stronger pattern that you're growing into. So I hope that is making a little sense. I'd love to chat more about this. I look forward to hearing you this week, noticing how you might connect with change as a positive in your life and allowing yourself to stay really imbalanced, able to find that center of your own volition and continuing on the path that means the direction that you're wanting to head. I'd like to learn if you recognize what you're saying to yourself when you encounter difficult change or something that might really throw you off. How are you speaking to it? And how are you feeding the part of the change that you're wanting to keep growing? How are you keeping that in the front of your mind and in your actions to keep you headed in that way? And I want to know how you're winning. How are you winning? So please put some comments either in this post or in the Unveiled Vitality group or on the YouTube channel. Like, what have you noticed this week that's helping you? How are you winning at making these changes happen? So that's it for today. I'd like to draw a card, and then I'd like to share with you a little bit about some changes that are happening on my end. So this week I wanted to draw, let's see. Let me see where it is. I think it's going to be my Divine Feminine. Is that right? Yes. We're going to look at a Divine Feminine card. And this applies to anyone, be you man or woman. The Divine Feminine is a very important part of our balance in this world. And when we think about the earth and growing plants and repatterning our mind, I think that there's a lot of feminine flow that can happen here. So what's the lens that we'd like to look through for this week? Let's do this one. This one is, Enhaduna, the High Priestess. It says, I am one with my soul, and my soul is a legacy of love. Can you see her? Oh, very beautiful. So she looks like she has a shield, breastplate, and like she has stars radiating off her head. So let's find out what they have to say about Enhadunya. She embodies the ability to become one with our soul to live out our highest purpose. I think that's beautiful. Let's see. She is the limitless love and the inexhaustible power that moves through us when we merge with our soul's purpose. It says, this is the meditation that goes with this card. It says, what allows me to experience the reality of my soul? What allows me to experience the reality of my soul? And the intention is, I am one with my soul, and my soul is a legacy of love. So as you know, in the Full Spectrum Vitality Collective, we work with the lens of love frequently. And I think this is a really sweet image to consider, is how are you one with your soul, and how is your soul a legacy of love, especially as change is happening? How do we stay connected to that soul piece of who we are? So that's our little card for today. And before we go, let's talk about a couple upcoming things and some changes. So during this last retreat, which was so wonderful, I was able to spend some time really diving into my schedule and understanding the best ways that I'm going to need to nourish me while still being able to serve you. So Mondays with Meaning is going to be rebranded and moving to a different day. It is going to be called Midweek with Meaning, and it will be happening on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. So it'll be a way to check in the middle of the week. We'll still do the same basic format, as to give you some vision of how to perceive the upcoming week between the two events. Hopefully really orienting you towards what's helping you in your own growth and supporting you in that way. So that's one thing I'm very excited about that. Make sure you mark your calendars. Also, of course, I want to remind you that our next teaching of Disrupt the Disruptor, 5 Days to Silencing Negative Self-Talk, is happening on March 15th. starting that day. So I will put the registration link in the comments. Please sign up ahead of time so we can make sure that we get your playbook to you, and also bring a friend. So if you have some friends that you think might benefit from this, or you think would be interested in this, please send them to the link and have them sign up, and let me know that you sent them. So there's a deal. I like to ethically bribe people in this event. The more folks that you bring, the more opportunities that you're getting entered into a drawing for some prizes. I love to give the prizes away. And that's one of the fun ways to do that is, how can you bring folks in to benefit from this as well? What else? Oh yeah, the Disrupt the Disruptor will be live inside the Unveiled Vitality Facebook group, as well as a private YouTube link. So if you want to sign up there, we'll make sure to let you know when that's going to happen. And I'm really excited to teach it again. It's super beneficial for everybody. Whenever we've worked on it, I've seen some really powerful breakthroughs. So that's the main jam, my friends. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works for you, thinking about some change. Have a beautiful day, and we'll talk next week. Bye.